everyone, this is Kitty here and welcome to the very first episode of Korean 123. So, the most important thing that you guys need to learn before you even start speaking Korean is how to read hangul. Hangul is, of course, the Korean alphabet. Okay, so that is the first thing that we will learn today. So we will learn about all of the consonants. So the Korean alphabet, hangul, consists of consonants and vowels. So there are 14 basic consonant letters and there are 5 double consonants. So altogether there are 19 consonants. So let's start with learning the consonants. So like I said, there are a total of 14 consonants and 5 double consonants. The first consonant we are going to learn is called kiok. Kiok. Now, this consonant can be pronounced as a G sound or as a K sound, depending on where the kiok is placed. So if the kiok is placed at the beginning of a syllable or a word, normally you would pronounce it like a G, kind of, but a much more silent kind of K, but it sounds like a G. So for example, if you wanted to say 감사합니다, 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 감사 kind of has that K sound, but it also sounds like a G. So 감사합니다. It's pretty much in the middle, I would say, like a G and a K sound. But if it's at the end of a syllable or a word, you would pronounce it as a K sound. So for example, 먹어요, to eat, 먹, 먹. That end, the kiok at the end of 먹, you would pronounce it as a K. Next one we have Nyan. Nyan is pronounced as the end sound. So no matter where it is, either in the beginning of a syllable or a word or at the end, it will always be the end sound. So for example, 누나, 누나. The nyan in the beginning of 누나 has the end sound. If you want to say 한 or 하나, the word 한, the nyan at the end of 한 is still the end sound. Okay, so no matter where it is, it will always be the end sound. So that is nyan and it's pronounced with the end sound. Next we have Teagood. Teagood, Teagood. Teagood can be pronounced as the D sound or the T sound. So for example, if the Dgood is at the beginning of a word or a syllable, you would pronounce it as the D sound. But if it's at the end of a word or a syllable, it would have the T sound. So for example, tam, tam, next. But just to tell you guys, the D sound kind of also sounds like a T, but it's, I would say probably a lower D sound, like a softer kind of D sound, not like a D kind of thing. Like if you want to say next, you wouldn't say 다음, it would be like 다음. So it's a much more softer D. So don't try to pronounce it too aggressively, I guess. Don't say like 다음, 다음, that would sound weird. So it'll be like 다음, 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 다음. So it would be a soft D sound if the Dgood is in the front of a syllable or a word. Then if it's at the end of a word or a syllable, you would use the T sound. So for example, Teagood. You could actually hear it from the word Teagood. Teagood. Good at the end. The second syllable, good. Even though it ends with D, it doesn't have the D sound, it has more of a T sound. So it's like Teagood. Or 걷다. 걷다 is to walk. So instead of the 걷, you wouldn't say 걷다. It would be like 걷다. So you would use the T sound if the Dgood is at the end of a word or syllable. Next we have 리을, 리을, 리을. Initially, if you use 리을 at the beginning of a syllable or a word, you would pronounce it as a R sound. But like I said, just like the D, the R isn't like really aggressive. You have to kind of tone it down a little, okay? And then if the lier is at the end, you will pronounce it as an L sound. So, for example, if you want to say logging, as in login, when you're on the internet and they say logging, logging. So logging with the lier at the beginning has the R sound, logging. Okay, like I said, the R isn't an aggressive R, so you wouldn't say like rogging. If you were to pronounce it with a really aggressive R sound, it will sound rogging. But tone it down and it'll be logging. So just, it's kind of like a mix of an L and an R together. Okay, so it's like a logging. So just roll your tongue tiny bit, not too much, and you'll get it perfectly. Logging. Okay, and of course I will say that it does sound like the L sound, but slightly also has the R sound to it as well. Okay, so if you have the lier at the end of a syllable or a word, you will pronounce it, like I said, like an L sound. So for example, 콜, 콜, 콜 as in like, not the call, but when they agree on something, they always say, oh, 콜, 콜. You would have a more an L sound to it. So like 콜, 콜. So it's kind of like ball, 콜, ball, 콜. Of course, you will have to roll your tongue just a tiny bit, but not as much as if the lier is at the beginning of a syllable. So I know it's a bit confusing, but with practice, you'll definitely be able to get it. Next one is 미음. 미음. Now this one you don't have to think too much of it, because no matter where it is placed, it will always have the M sound. So for example, 마음, 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 the heart or the chest, 마음. As you can hear, the syllable for the beginning, for 미음, ma, is still the M sound. At the end, you still pronounce it as the M. So that's an easy peasy. Next we have 삐업. 삐업. It's called the 삐업. Okay. It has two pronunciations. If it is at the beginning of a syllable, it is pronounced with a B sound. But once again, not fully an aggressive B. Okay, it's like a softer kind of B. And if it's at the end, you will pronounce it more as a P sound. So for example, 밥, 밥, rice or food. 밥, as you can hear in the beginning, the 삐업, 밥 has the B sound, but at the end it turns into a P sound. 밥, 밥. It's not like bop. If it's like BB sound, it would be like bop. And that's not how you would say it. It will be bop. Okay, so if it's at the beginning, it's a B sound, but not an aggressive type of B sound, but just a slight, tone it down a little. And then of course at the end it will be a P sound, like bop. Next consonant is called 시옷. Now 시옷 can be pronounced as an S or a T, just like depending on where you place it. If it's in the beginning of a syllable, it would have the S sound. But if it is placed at the end of a syllable, it will have the T sound. So for example, sh, sh, okay, sh, as a sound effects that Koreans like to use. Sh. So as you can see, the shiat in the beginning has the S sound, sh, but at the end, the shiat has a T sound, sh, sh. Okay, so remember that, because you don't want to pronounce it as sh. Even though, I mean, in English, to be quiet, shish, does make sense, but in Korean it wouldn't be, and so you pronounce it as sh. Sh. Next one is the ing. Ing. So depending on where it's placed, it's actually really easy for this one. If you place it in the beginning of a syllable, it's a silent sound, so you don't pronounce it at all. But if it is at the end, you kind of pronounce it as an ing. ing. Okay? So for example, if you want to say 아기, 아기 as in child, you see the ing at the end of a, you don't pronounce it, and thus you only pronounce the vowel a, where we will learn later on how to pronounce the vowels. So as you can see, the ing at the beginning of a syllable is omitted and you don't pronounce it at all. But if it is at the end of a syllable, you would have the ing sound. So for example, wang, wang. At the end of wang, you have the ing, and thus you pronounce it with the ing kind of sound, or ng depending on it. So it's wang, ang sound. Next is jiet, jiet. Now jiet can be pronounced, if you can hear it, it's pronounced two ways. If it's in the beginning of a syllable, you would have the J sound. But if it is at the end, it is pronounced as the T sound. So just like the word jiet, you can see the G has the jiet as the first letter in the syllable, so it's pronounced with the J sound. But if it's at the end, like ut, ji ut, ut, the jiet has the T sound. Next we have chiet. So just like jiet, for chiet, when it's in the beginning of a syllable, you pronounce it as the CH sound, the ch. But if it's at the end, you pronounce it as the T sound. So for example, we will use chiet. Chiet, as you can see, the ch, the first syllable, ch, the jiet and the ch in chi is pronounced with the CH sound. But the jiet at the end of ut is pronounced with the T sound. Next we have kiet, kiet. Both, this is an easy peasy one as well. No matter where you place it, it will always have the K sound. So for example, if you want to say ki, for that one little syllable right there, ki, the kia is pronounced as a K. Okay? But if it's, at the end, just like kia, you will also pronounce it as the K sound. Next we have tiet, tiet. So for this one, no matter where you place it, it will always be the T sound. So for example, tiara. So the syllable T in tiara, the tiet in T is pronounced as the T sound. And when tiet is at the end of a syllable, just like tiet, the ut, the tiet in the ut will be pronounced as the T sound. Next we have piep. Piep, no matter where you place it, will be pronounced with the P sound. So for example, we will just use piep. So as you can see, the first syllable in piep, the piep in P has the P sound. A lot of P's going on. Then for the second syllable, up, the piep in up also has the P sound, and thus you pronounce this word piep. Next we have the hiet, hiet. So for the beginning of hiet, if you use it at the beginning of a syllable, it would have the H sound. But if you have it at the end of a syllable, it will be pronounced with the T sound. So for example, hiet. Okay, the hiet in he is pronounced with an H. But the hiet in ut is pronounced with a T. But of course, there are always these special occasions in the Korean language. Well, in any language, there was always a special thing when it comes to these pronunciations, but we will get to that much later. Now we will learn about the double consonants. Now there are 5 double consonants. So the very first one is called the Sankyo. So basically it's just double kyo, okay? And in Korean it's called Sankyo, okay? And just like kyok, if you have it in the beginning of a syllable, it has the G sound, but if it's put at the end, it has the K sound. So for example, if you want to say go, go, the Sankyo for go has the G sound. But if you have it at the end, for example, 밖에, 밖에, the pak in 밖에, the Sankyo is pronounced with a K sound. Pak, 밖에, pak. Okay. Next, we have sang Dgood. So basically 2 Dgoods together. Sang Dgood. And just like Teagood, if it's put in the beginning, it is of course pronounced with the D sound. But if it's put at the end, it has the D sound. So for example, 떡볶이, 떡볶이, the sang Dgood at the end of 또 has the D sound. The next one is called the 상비읍. 상비읍. So just like the regular bi읍, if it's put in the beginning of a syllable, it has the B sound. But if it's put at the end, it will have the P sound. So for example, 오빠, 오빠. The 상비읍 in 빠 has the B sound. Even though when you write it down in English, in romanization, it uses P, but when you're pronouncing it, it has more of a oppa, oppa. So, like I said, it's not like a really aggressive B sound, but a more slight, tone it down a little B. Okay, so it's like oppa, pa. And like I said, if it's put at the end, it will be pronounced as the P sound. Next, you have the sang-siot, sang-siot. And just like the regular siot, when it's put in the beginning of a syllable, it has the S sound. But if it's put at the end, it has the T sound. So for example, she, like kitty she, when you are announcing or mentioning someone that you are not really familiar with, or if they're older than you or someone you look up to, you will say like their name, and then at the end you would add a she. The sang-siot would be pronounced as an S sound, so kitty she, kitty she. Okay, but if it's at the end, for example, 있다, 있다. The sang-siot for it has the T sound. But of course, there are other times where even though it is at the end, it will be pronounced as an S. So for that, we will learn it some other day. But for now, just know that if it's at the beginning, it has an S sound, and if it's at the end, it will pronounce as the T sound. Last but not least, the last consonant is called the sang-jiet. So double jiet, sang-jiet. If it's at the beginning, it is pronounced with the J, but if it's at the end, it is pronounced with a T. So for example, 짱, 짱. The sang-jiet is pronounced with the J sound. But if it's put at the end, you would pronounce it with a T sound. Okay? So those are all the consonants. So all in all, there is a total of 19 consonants within the Korean alphabet or hangul. Let's go through them one more time. So we have 기역,
Nyan,
디귿, 리을, 미음, 비읍, 시옷, 이응, 지읒, 치읓, 키읔, 티읕, 비읍, 히읗, and of course the double consonants, Sankyo, Teagood, Sankyo, Sankyo, and last but not least, Sankyo. Okay, so practice, 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 or if you want to watch this video as much as you want to help you pronounce these consonants. So that is all for this episode's Korean 1, 2, 3. And stay tuned for next week where we go over how to pronounce all the vowels. Also, for the ones who didn't know, Channel KK's new music countdown called Top K will be coming really soon. Voting starts now, so just go on down to the link below and vote for your favorite artist. And also to tell you guys, if you go to the trailer for Top K, just tell me your top 5 songs and I will add additional points to them. So for your number 1 song, they will get a total of 5 points. For your number 2 song, they'll get 4, and etc, etc, okay? And also for video reactions, just comment below and tell me whose music video I should react to. And if you have any questions for me for my KK Q&A, just comment below as well. And if you have any other questions regarding on today's episode of Korean 1, 2, 3, just comment below and I'll happily be there to help you with your Korean. So that is all for this time, and I will see you guys next time. Happy studying! 안녕!